Hello everybody, my name is Becki Morris. I'm the Director of DCN and also Associate Consultant for Embed, a cross-sector consortium for equality and diversity and inclusion for supporting all organisations across all sectors on their inclusion journey. I'm also very happy to be a board member for AchieveAbility. I'm really happy to be joined today by Sarah Simcoe, who is founder of Embed and a globally experienced practitioner of equality and diversity and inclusion. So welcome, Sarah. It's brilliant to see you.
And you. Thanks so much for inviting me. What a great opportunity.
Thank you. Before I forget, just to let you know, this is I'm going to audio describe what I look like. So I am a white woman with square framed glasses. I have short brown hair, and also I'm wearing a black jumper. How about yourself, Sarah?
See, now we're going to sound very twinning in our outfits. So Sarah Simcoe, white female. I have long brown wavy hair. I'm also wearing black rimmed glasses, squarish kind of glasses. And I too am wearing a black jumper.
It's that time of black jumper wearing. It's getting cold now, isn't it?
It is. It's
yeah.
chilling.
Right. I'm just going to whisk through this. So what we were going to talk about today was the passports. We know that a global society is becoming increasingly diverse, and organisations across all sectors need to make a conscious effort to ensure that they enable individuals and communities from different backgrounds to thrive together. We know that for business to thrive, we need a diverse workforce, which are multidimensional thinkers, creative problem solvers to adapt and change business models and engage flexible working practice to navigate through COVID and all of its challenges. But having this conversation is really difficult, particularly if you have a disability or a neurodivergent. I'm dyslexic, or your needs have changed from picking up a child from school. This can all be really, really difficult, particularly if you work in a competitive sector such as culture and the arts. But the key thing is that what we're going to cover today is a key tool in relation to that conversation, and also to support people in the workplace if they're neurodivergent, they're disabled, if their needs have changed, and to support employers in that process as well. And these are passports. They're a key tool to create and develop this and sustain an inclusive workplace to support everyone at all levels. And we know that it's flexible enough to support other sections of our sectors, including freelancers, volunteers and trainees, particularly in regards to health and safety, and also in terms of engaging any particular needs that they would require. But what we're also going to do is talk about where it all began, what are its particular benefits, how do you use it, and what is key to remember from our conversation today. I'm also conscious that we have 10 minutes, so it'll be a bit of a steam train ride through, but what we will do is we're always available to talk about this, and if you need help or you want further information, just pick up the phone or send us an email. Right, Sarah, are we on our way?
We are on our way.
Indeed. Right. So, I don't know about you, but we know that the passport is relatively quite simple, isn't it, in terms of that conversation?
Yeah, absolutely. Really simple tool. And I think the simplicity of it means that it's so usable for people, and intentionally so. When it was originally created, intentionally so to keep it simple, I think it then helps support a far more effective conversation, for sure.
It's one of those things as well where the employee, it supports the employer in what they can do to support their staff and their changing needs. So they're not having to react to a situation. They can actually go away and have a think about it. And it's extremely flexible, isn't it?
It is, absolutely. I mean, I always describe it as a facilitator. It's a facilitator of a conversation for you and your manager to really understand your adjustment needs. I had one in the days when I was employed by another company. I had a passport, and the simplicity and the ability to use that to facilitate a conversation for me to educate my manager, but then for us to also agree the adjustments that are really going to help me within the workplace. I found it's just so useful for me to set out the support that I need, more so I can thrive as my authentic self in the workplace. So yeah, really useful. And then it followed me round. You definitely avoid the need of having to repeat that conversation as you change jobs, as you change managers. So really useful.
I think for me, one of the things, because wherever I've been 23 years in the heritage sector, and as you know, I do DCN, and I work with you, with Embed and the team. And for me, it's like, if you see a key piece of that jigsaw puzzle to create more intersectional, inclusive workplaces, you want to sort of say, this is what we need, because often there's a lot of self-advocacy within a creative sector. And the problem is with that advocacy is that you're constantly having to remind people that you may not be able to do things in a certain way. So it almost becomes a little bit kind of, this is what I can't do, but I'm a multidimensional strategic thinker. This is what I can do. And that passport can bring that to life as well, can't it?
Absolutely. It's a brilliant facilitator of that conversation. It's also a really useful educational tool, because I think you're right. I think we do end up sometimes focusing in on the negative stereotype and what people are not able to do, and we forget about all of the glorious and wonderful things we can do. So I think you're absolutely right, Becki. Yeah.
Beautiful. And I know that one of the things that some of my colleagues, like Charles, who will be coming to the conference, were talking about, that it's flexible enough. So then you could potentially look at using it for freelancers, particularly people within the film industry that only are employed for a couple of weeks, because it gives you that leverage to just understand if there's any particular difficulties, but also in terms of those key strengths and any kind of changes that need to naturally occur.
Yeah, I mean, historically, it's for employees. And if you think about, the employer's legal obligation around workplace adjustments. So historically, it's for employees, but the opportunity, to your point, is for us to honour our obligation to support people doing work for us. Yeah, absolutely.
Beautiful. Right. So in terms of how it all began, it's been originally designed by BT about 15 years ago, which is extraordinary. And it was a response. That's what I love about this. It's the idea that of people thinking and creating action-based solutions to resolve an issue. Would you like to talk a little bit more about that, Sarah? Is that okay?
Yeah, of course. Yeah. So it was originally created by BT about 15 years ago. And the consultant that actually spearheaded it, we have the pleasure of working with as part of Embed, that's Sally Ward. And when it was spearheaded, it was the most simple tool that they created, a simple set of questions to facilitate a conversation on the back of someone's specific workplace need. And what that allowed them to do was have a very informal feeling conversation with their manager that allowed them to educate their manager on their needs, and then some workplace adjustments were put in as a result. On the back of that one conversation, BT then got to the place where they deployed this as a passport across the organisation. And then, in the 15 years since that happened, the passport has just grown in strength, from strength to strength. It's in public sector, it's in private sector. It's used in many different forms, from simple Word documents to HR systems having the version in there. However an organisation wishes to use it, the same principle is applied, but the take up of it has just been phenomenal. The fact that it's still around 15 years later, I think is testament to that.
Yeah. I know when I found out about it, the first thing I said to myself was, oh my God,
yeah,
the creative industries need this. Absolutely. I think one of the key elements for me is that the passport itself is intersectionally inclusive. Yeah. So it doesn't have to have just a disability or neurodiversity lens. It's intersectional. So if you happen to be have a particular faith and you happen to be dyslexic, it can be sorted. In terms of that whole sort of sector recovery as well, that intersectional inclusion is key with people who are shielding because of COVID. It's got a major play there in terms of developing those processes to support people. Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I think the key thing for me is that we know that 40% of workers in the creative industries are neurodivergent and also are self-employed. So like we say, there's that flexible approach, and also in terms of how it's such a mature tool now, so there's a lot of knowledge and support behind it. But also because people's needs change over time, it's a living record of those adjustments. Now I have to say, I've not had a passport in my career, and I wish I had, but I know as well that it's a clear, transparent tool in what your employer has agreed to do, which I know is a very key element to neurodivergent people. That was the situation similar to what you've seen of the passports.
Absolutely, absolutely. I mean, one of the things that we always find is the argument to not roll out a passport is because there's the worry around confidentiality. There's a worry around how information is going to be used. But in actual fact, it flips the other way, because often people don't have the conversation around their condition or their impairment, however they wish to describe it, whether it's their faith, whether it's flexible caring responsibilities. People find it uncomfortable having those conversations. So in actual fact, what's been so powerful about the passport is it's enabled people to move away from the fear associated with that. And I think that's been one of the big things that's really enabled a greater level of understanding them when it comes to ensuring we're making adjustments for our people. I think that's been one of the big factors in it. And I think whether that's been neurodivergent colleagues. There was a guy I used to work with who had 3 of the 4Ds, and for sure he found the passport a really useful way for him to be clear on what that meant to him, because each of us also have very different experiences of our conditions and impairments. No 2 experiences are the same. And in that regard, I think it really helps us focus in on the need of the individual.
Absolutely. Oh, I couldn't agree with you more. I think in terms of how you use it is that it's completely voluntary, but also it outlines those adjustment needs, and also that it can be building an understanding between you and your line manager, but it also gives your line manager a sense of preparation and extra support, so they don't have to sort of answer straight away. They can actually go away, they can have a further conversation with you, so that authenticity in that conversation doesn't feel in any way a worry as such. You may feel anxious about it, talking about your condition, but there's that room to maneuver that I think you don't get with self-advocacy. It's always reaction like that. And would you say keeping up a regular review is a key element to all of this?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, each of us, I've got my own conditions, and I've acquired my little bag of conditions through the course of time. So I'm an example of having to come back to the passport and adjust it. Your needs do change over the course of time, whether that's related to disabled people, whether that's related to caring responsibilities, whether that's adjustments around ensuring we can take time to honour our faith. I think making sure we're continually checking in that we're getting everything we need, I think, is important. So that regular review cycle, I mean, by regular, I would typically do mine once a year, to be fair. I think that's more than enough for most people. But if somebody's going through a particular illness, as an example, if they're in the circumstances of what that means around COVID is unfortunately a relevant example. Our needs are forever changing. I've got family members where their needs month on month are really changing when they've been affected by COVID. So I think the review frequency is definitely going to be an individual thing as well.
That's fantastic, and absolutely with COVID, particularly how people who may not have considered of having a disability or any kind of sort of needs per se, that actually this is the time that everybody at all levels can complete a passport, just to support the organisation and themselves in those changing needs as well, in those processes.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think in regards to the passport, I think one of the key elements for me is that it proactively supports rather than that reactive support. And it's one of those key elements as well, that it actually creates those opportunities to actually make sure it fits well within your organisation, and also develop existing equality, diversity and inclusion processes as well. I always feel though, because we've discussed about this, it's important that it's not landed like with a parachute into an organisation. It needs to have a good setup and structure behind it. Absolutely. And that's something we can help with, can't we?
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that the organisations that have done it and have done it well have listened to their own people in the first instance. That voice of the lived experience is so key. Then really taken a planned approach to rolling it out, focusing in on what that means in terms of confidentiality, data protection, how's that going to support the individual. But I think the one thing, when you get all of that right, the one thing that the proactiveness of it all helps to do is alleviate some of the anxious and the fear of having the conversation. You know, is the passport going to fix all of our problems in the workplace? No, but it's absolutely going to facilitate a conversation that allows us to seek the support and the adjustments that we do need to help remove some of those barriers that we potentially face.
Proactive, yeah.
Absolutely proactive.
Sorted. Right. And I think it's important for us to remember as well, though, those people that are engaging today, is that it's not a legally binding agreement, but it's a clear roadmap of what the organisation has done to support you and in agreement with you in respect to what those workplace adjustments can be in respect to your work. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, and you know, the Equality Act sets out that our employers have a legal obligation to make workplace adjustments where it's appropriate. You know, that's why some people call them reasonable. So it's right and fitting for us to have that conversation. But I do think it's important for people to understand the obligatory perspective on it.
Absolutely. And like I say, we're here to support, as always.
Yeah, always. I mean, you know, the approach we take, you know, you and I have been working together a long time now. And the approach we take is really to roll our sleeves up and help people to get this right and rolled out in an effective way. So, you know, if people are interested in learning more, Becki, then, you know, we're absolutely on standby to do all that we can to help. It's absolutely a great tool, great facilitatory tool.
Yeah, and it doesn't matter how big your organisation is or how small it is, a passport could be useful to everybody.
Yeah,
beautiful.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much. I
My
really
pleasure.
do appreciate your time, and thank you very much, everybody.